Hello and welcome to another edition of Curious Rebel TV. My name is Advita Patel and I'm the founder of CommsRebel, which is an internal communications and employee experience consultancy based in Manchester. We focus on helping organisations revolutionise the way they communicate through inclusive communications. And today I am chuffed to bits to be joined by Sarah Weston. Sarah's been part of my world for a very long time. I think like 2012, since CIPR, right, Sarah? You've been involved in CIPR stuff. It's been a while. And we're going to be talking all things events today and inclusive events. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask Sarah to introduce herself.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. And it's really unusual because as an event planner, you're usually behind the scenes. So being here front and center is, whilst I'm not shy, it's a bit unusual. I'm very much a behind the scenes girl. But yes, I should say, my name's Sarah. I've had the pleasure of working with Avita for a long time. And I've been in events for 20 plus years now. Kind of organically fell into it when I was at university. Actually, I was working behind the bar. I became an elected officer, and roles and responsibilities were student balls and fundraisers and campaigns, and I fell in love with it. And as I say, 20 plus years later, here I am still doing it.
Amazing. And what's your organization called?
So I've called myself Purple Connections, and the reason for that is because what I do is all about connecting people, suppliers, venues, in the UK and around the world. And I thought Connections really sums up what I do. And I am that kind of that link between the kind of the dream, if you like, of the vision, and then finding the people who can then make it happen. And purple, it's quite a cool color. It's in your color palette as well, and and it's good to focus on a color as well.
It is, yeah. No, purple is one of my favorite colors. If people didn't guess that, and pink and hot pink as well. So events, right? So internal communication folks, and actually communication folks in general, do deal with a lot of events, and internally and externally. We're going to talk about it from an employee experience internal perspective, because things have changed, haven't they, Sarah, in the last 3-4 years since the pandemic, in how we approach events and how we do events, and not only in terms of because of the pandemic, but also because of we've been more aware, of the needs of the people that we want to communicate with in terms of accessibility and inclusivity. Have you seen a shift in how events are hosted in your 20 plus year experience, and what's been the kind of greatest shifts for you that you've witnessed and seen?
I think, well, the pandemic was huge in terms of events. We went from a very kind of buoyant industry where people were coming together for every reason and having successful events. That in that pandemic time, there was that huge need to pivot and kind of turn things online a lot of the times. I think coming out of the pandemic now, that drive or that energy or that demand for in-person events has really picked up again. I think if you look back to 2022, the events industry was kind of on fire. Everybody wanted to get back together, and it wasn't just corporate events. If you look at all the festival market, if you look at all the kind of national events that were taking place as well, everybody needed that kind of that connection, that getting back together, that human touch, and that was a real buzz. We're kind of coming out of that now, and I think 2023 we've seen a slight shift in that, and people are being more considered now when it comes to their events. I think what we've discovered is, in real life, IRL as we now call it, but that in-person event scenario cannot be replaced by online. I think there's a requirement, and I think there'll always be a need now for online, because we've, as an industry, that kind of the technology section of the event industry kind of really stepped up to the mark and provided some amazing platforms for people to use. But I think that in-person event, there's just really is nothing better. And I think when you're looking at the content now of an event, you just need to think about your audience and what's going to be right for them. And I think there will be an element of on demand or virtual, but I think the main benefit is when people come together in in that shared space as a community, you know, having that shared experience.
Yeah. And it's even more important now, I think, because of the hybrid and remote working that we do have. You know, before we had the privileges of kind of bumping into our workmate or colleague in the kitchen, making a cup of tea and having a chit chat, or going along to a town hall in the foyer of an office somewhere, or on the factory floor or whatever. Nowadays, you know, like you said, people, you know, rightly so, there's flexibility in how we work and how we connect with each other. But there is that, like to your point, it's that missing connection. And the events side of things is where we can bring that connection in, right? And that's what I believe anyway. I know it's not for everybody, but the reason I did In a Rebel, which is what you supported me with and walked me through the kind of entire process, was to kind of bring people together in a space where there's a lot of energy, you know, a lot of conversation, connection, collaboration. That was a key part of the work that we did for In a Rebel. But we also live streamed it. So those who couldn't be there could watch, you know, on demand or watch live. But do you think hybrid events work well? Do you think it's just like a tokenistic thing that we're doing, or does it actually work? Do people still have that, you know, can you still have people in person and people watching online and still have the same experience?
Yes and no. I think you've got to take it back to the objective of the events and the reason why that person is attending the event, what their objectives are, and what your objectives are. Whether you're an organizer with a pay to attend event, or whether you're doing it for your team, for your workforce. I think you've got to think about what it is that they want to get out of it. I think you can stream maybe, you know, the big messages, the keynotes, that one, you know, where it's you're delivering information that you need people to understand and take away. So I think that can work. I think where the challenges are, where it's you know, I think, you know, that kind of water cooler moment almost, you know, where you're in a group of people and you're talking about maybe what you've just heard, or how you're going to then make that happen back in the office or back at your unit, or wherever it may be. So I think it's looking at the content and working out what's going to be better kind of as a live stream, and what needs to have that, you know, more of a one-to-one or two-way conversation and engagement. And again, looking at platforms, I know there are platforms where you can, you know, whereas you've got a physical breakout, you can go into you know, an online room and have a breakout, and then it's looking at how you facilitate that. You know, I think a group in a room would naturally spark and vibe, and the conversation would be quite free flowing. And, you know, how you have that same feeling in a room, you know, and you've got to look at your team, your facilitators, who you can support and kind of get that conversation going.
Yeah. And it's also important to, you know, you've mentioned in terms of the outcomes. So what outcome are you looking for? What's the purpose of that event? How do you want people to think, feel, and do as well? That, you know, that's a critical part of what we do. And when we started to plan the kind of In a Rebel event a couple of years ago, the very first one, you know, I gave you a very it was a very ambitious brief, as I remember. I think I was saying to you that I want it to be like this, and I want it to be like that, and it has to be accessible, and it has to be inclusive, and we want people to belong, and we want them to feel included in the conversations. And the reason it was so important to me is because, as an internal comms person who's worked in-house for a number of years, we often did staff events and colleague events and employee events, member events, and they were just a little bit dry. You know, I mean, it'll be interesting to hear for those who are watching either on replay or watching us live now, in terms of do they feel that we can sometimes be hindered and how we want to do these types of events, you know? And it's the same old, and you've done a few in-house events as well, in terms of this process, isn't it? It's like, you know, you have the chief exec or the leader talking to a slide deck that's often got lots of words on. And then you have another speaker coming in. You might do a bit of a panel thing. You know, you may do a little bit of Q&A at the end of it, and then you go off for lunch and have some boring sandwiches and back. You know, it just feels really dry, and people dread them. So when I talk to colleagues and clients right now about event stuff, they don't want to go. They're like, oh, I don't want to go. It's just wasting my time. I'm not going to learn anything. And what I realize is that it's not, the reason that happens is because I think a lot of people don't have the clarity on what they're trying to achieve from that event. You know, and you could, is that meme into that goes around, could it have been an email rather than an event? So in all the events that you supported over the last couple of decades and stuff, especially in the last 5-6 years, what's been the best event, and what made it different for you?
Oh, crumbs. I think it's thinking differently. So, like you say, an event could be quite easily be very formulaic. You like you say, that you get in, you get the keynote address from the CEO, then you listen to a bunch of presentations. And I think the ones that work best are the ones where they've kind of maybe brought their personality to life, and they've presented in their own style, and it's not a bunch of a slide deck with 1,000 words on it. I did one recently, and we had a catwalk stage, really simple, but a catwalk stage. It was some of the presenters are really uncomfortable, but we rehearsed and we got used to it. But what that did, it kind of brought them out into the room. It's a really simple edit to a very traditional stage set, and all of a sudden people were in the room. The seats were slightly differently. They were kind of like, it became like a theatre performance, where everyone was kind of like in that curved seating as opposed to very linear, everyone facing forward in a straight line. And it enabled the presenters to kind of get involved. It also enabled presenters to have multiple people on stage, and then they had that interaction. So I think just a simple trick like that kind of gave a different energy. There was another one I did as well, and it's about entering the stage, whereby rather than "and your next speaker is," and they take a step up from the front, we did it a bit more glamorous. It was like Britain's Got Talent or something, and they walked through the door at the back, and it's unexpected, and all of a sudden the audience were like, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be different." So I think anything like that, which you walk into a room, it doesn't look like you expect it to be. All of a sudden, you're going to start your interest and engagement, and it's that the icebreakers on stage, the getting people to stand up, those sorts of things. They definitely make people, and it becomes memorable then. And it won't be that event where we sat theatre style. It'd be that event where we did, and we experienced this, or we saw that, or we had this presenter who made us do that. So I think that's simple things like that can make a real big difference.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was just thinking back to this year's Inner Rebel, where I walked on with that sax player. the number of people who weren't there but seen that little clip of me walking on, they were just like, "Oh my goodness, that's just like genius!" Like, because it is, what, for me, it's that shock and delight, almost, to kind of get it kind of sets the energy for the day, doesn't it? So that moment, that 3, 4, 5 minutes at the start of the day, is that energy moment for me. So I said to everybody for Inner Rebel, so if anyone's interested in terms of how do you build that kind of inclusive event where everyone feels part of the conversation and is energized and wanting to collaborate and wanting to connect with different people, it's the moment they enter that door. So as soon as they open that door to that venue or that event, they have to feel like, wow, this is different. And it's not just about big flashy things, right? Obviously, they can make a difference and stuff like that, but it's about the atmosphere in the room, which is why we have a DJ.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you think back to the event that we produced earlier this year, one of the comments on site was, we were in a venue, we were on the 2nd or 3rd floor. So a customer had to come in, had to take a lift. But before they even got into the venue, they saw a smiley face on the outside, and they knew they were in the right place, and they knew they were going to have a good day, because before, that touch point, before they even got in there, we set the tone was set, and they were like, okay, I'm in the right place. There's a big smile here. I'm going to smile too. Let's do it. And then that set the tone for and that was our objective. Like you're saying, it wasn't a monetary thing. It was a real focus on the event experience. How can they have the best experience? That was a simple meet and greet on arrival when they came in. Because they're all individuals, as opposed to maybe, a company where everybody knows each other. We anticipated that. We assumed nobody knew anybody. And so everybody had like this amazing greet and make sure you're okay. And let's show you where the tea, coffee is. Let's show you where the bathroom is. Let's make you feel comfortable. This is a really safe, secure space, regardless of who you are, what your background is. And, you're going to have the best day. And then that was kind of like almost like the strategy, which then throve throughout the whole day.
It was, yeah. And I had buddies, as you know. So if anybody was kind of stood on their own, or they looked a bit uncertain, or just a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, the buddies kind of went over and said, oh, hi, let me introduce you to a few people. Or are you doing okay? And let me take you over here. Here's the coats, and where you can leave your luggage, and here's the, like you said, here's the drinks, and this is where this is. And what really helped, I think, on this time was that one level. And I know it's not always convenient to do that, but the one level, and you could see everybody on this one level, definitely made it much easier to connect and to feel more comfortable in that space. And it is something I believe, and like I said, if anyone's listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we don't often give as much thought to the venue that we're going to go and host the event in, and I know sometimes budget plays a big part in that, the location plays a big part in that, where people are going, that kind of stuff is a big part. But that for me is critical. That venue space has to be accessible, for one thing. I've heard so many horror stories from colleagues who have been invited to an event, and then it's access only, and there's no lift, or there's the stage doesn't have a ramp, so people can't get on it, and there's a couple of steps to get up there. It's little things like that, and people may not, the majority won't see it or notice it, but for the minority, it can really impact how they are, how they experience a day. And I think I had a bit of rage with you, didn't I, for the first one? Not at you, with you, because the event that we hosted the first event in didn't even consider accessibility, like on stage. And every time we wanted to add something that was a bit more accessible, it was an additional cost. Yeah. And that is a bit of a frustration. And again, I don't know if you've noticed a shift in event hosts in terms of, look, this is that, we will, like, do they guide in the kind of person to say, look, this is the accessible route, here's how you can get the ramp on here, here's how we do the captioning if you want live captioning? Or is that something driven by the people who are organizing it? Have you seen a shift, or is that still a lot of work to do you think?
I think venues are becoming more aware of it, but I think absolutely it's being driven by, the customer, like in our scenario, yourself, and then me as the event planner. However, venues are becoming more understanding. I did a site visit recently, and we needed to consider the gender of the audience and the toilets on site. Now, on this particular scenario, we had exclusive use of a floor, so the venue were very comfortable with us adapting as we needed to suit our audience. And there was no question about it. They were really supportive of it. But, I don't think it's something as a matter of course, at the moment, it isn't automatically assumed, which, and I think in the future, it will have to become more automatically assumed. And it'll be an essential rather than a nice to have. But, they were very accommodating. And, going back to our scenario, we were a bit flabbergasted that, it was a supplement, it was an extra, and it was just like, well, actually, no, we want to be inclusive, and so this needs to be this is an absolute essential. It's not a nice to have on that scenario. So I think there's probably some education to be done there, and it'll be through inquiries like events that you have, and like I say, event planners like me pushing it forward and raising it on the agenda, and ensuring that events are more inclusive. And it's not just that, like I say, I mean, we've just talked about gender and the physical aspects then, but it's also about the other elements. So it may be the audio description or the captioning, and it's with AI, it's becoming much more easy to do. And it's not necessarily just broadcasting it online, it's having that space in the room. We mentioned about an event being a safe and secure space when somebody comes along. If that's what they need for it to be safe and secure for them, we want everybody to have equal access to an equal right to enjoy that event. And so that's why it's really important to be able to do that.
I mean, I still can't go over how many events don't have captioning or live captioning, and I find it really interesting that even in this day and age that we just don't really think about it. And I know it'll be down to cost, right? Because it's an investment, and it's expensive at times, especially if you have a live captioner, in the room doing the captioning for you and things like that. But like you said, we used AI for the Inner Rebel conference for the last couple of years. And it's, we built that into our cost because it was an important part, and people really appreciated it. Even those who were not deaf or hard of hearing felt that when they could read some of the captioning, they found it really useful because especially when your brain gets a little bit tired. So that, is kind of considering, we need to build this into our costs and we need to do it properly. And if we don't build it into our costs, then we're probably not doing things as inclusively as we'd like to do. And that applies to external events and internal events. I think we need to be mindful that not all of our colleagues will tell us if they have a need or if they need additional assistance. So we just have to take that on board and realize actually we should have it anyway. Because I always say that if you help the minority, the majority will always benefit from those touches that you put in place. So 2024, what are your predictions? Where do you think the events industry is going to go in 2024? Do you think we're going to settle down a little bit more? We're going to do more events, fewer events, more online, more hybrid? What's your predictions?
So I think in-person events is going to continue, and I think that is going to. I think we're probably going to plateau a little bit. Like I say, I think we spiked in the last couple of years just because we had two years of the pandemic, and that really, stopped a lot of those communications happening. So I think we're probably coming to more of a plateau now, and I think people will, organisations will bear in mind their audience, so they'll think about that kind of work-life balance, which has become a real kind of buzz, if you like, now. And an outcome of the pandemic. So I think it will be very much continue to be in-person events. I think what we will probably look at is maybe the travel side of things. So whereas, I don't know, a software company may have done an annual event in London and 6,000+ people would attend that event. I think, the contingent who may be coming from, say, outside of Europe will, question from a sustainability, from a cost point of view, from a time point of view, and they will now think, actually, what is the benefit? What is my objective of attending this event, and how can I get the best out of it? And so I think in those scenarios, you will see that kind of hybrid working still. But going back to, the in-person events and the networking element, I think that plays such an important part of the event. And it's often where deals are made, where relationships are created, and those really can't be replaced. And the benefit of those, when you go back into the offices, the workplace, when you're sitting around the negotiation table, striking a deal, that's the thing you're going to remember. People remember people. People buy off people. People are so powerful, really.
Well, that's it. You like I said to you just before we went live that I've been to 4 events in the last few weeks. And even though it can be a little bit exhausting, and if you are a little bit more introverted, which I hate labels, but a little bit more quieter, just need a little bit more time on your own, it can be a bit too much sometimes when you're in that space, especially spending so many, 3 years really in isolation almost. We're not really connecting with people. But the powerful conversations that you can have in person, it can't be replicated anywhere else. Like, the bouncing off the energy, the people just joining conversations, like, walking around with a cup of tea and joining in. You can't really do that online. You're kind of in that kind of static mode, aren't you, with 1 or 2 people? You don't really have somebody bumping into you going, oh my God, hi, how you doing? How's things going? And forming those. I've met so many people that I've never engaged with before, or I wasn't even aware that they did that type of role. And I learned so much as well from those real side conversations and water cooler moments, as some people would say. And I think we underestimate the power of those conversations and the relationships, to your point, Sarah, that can really add value to not only our personal connections, but also professional connections.
Yeah. And I think if you think about the conversations you have online, it's such a polite conversation, and we're always like apologizing for speaking over somebody. And I think the tally of how many, oh, I'm sorry, no, you carry on, no, you go, no, you go. When you're in that when you're in that huddle with your cup of tea and your biscuit, you're speaking over each other because the energy, and you all want to say something, and the energy makes you more energetic and more excited, and makes it more memorable. And I think thinking about it, an online meeting is very, very polite, isn't it?
It's very formal. Yeah, it's like, oh, so sorry, you carry on. No, you carry on. Oh, I'm totally interjecting. And you put yourself, everyone's on mute because you don't want the background noise and all that kind of stuff. So you lose those little nuances, right? Like, oh yeah, I agree with you, or oh my gosh, yes. And you you tap somebody on the hand or whatever, and say, oh God, like, can I just interrupt? That kind of stuff doesn't happen. Like you said, it's so formal and so stilted at times. And it doesn't, I mean, in some occasions it works really well. You have to be very intentional with it. But I would say that if you're going in with an open mind and you just want to learn, then in person, it's definitely a much more powerful experience. Talking about events and powerful experiences and things like that, I'm going to my favorite part of this chat is personal questions. Nothing too intimate, don't worry. My favorite question to ask my guest on here who would you invite for dinner? So who would be your 5 dinner guests? If you were going to do this event and a dinner, who would you invite? They can be alive, they can be dead, whatever you want, and whoever you want.
Oh, right. Okay. So I think someone like Mary Portas, I've worked with her and seen her and obviously followed her on social media. And I think she's so insightful, so passionate and such a force. It was when I worked with her on a conference, it was that total silence in the room because she was so engaging and passionate. We wanted to listen to what she had to say. Nice. So I think she would be a good one. I would have to say, a bit of a hero of mine, Beverly Knight, from the Midlands, a Midlands girl. I actually went to see her last week, but I just think she's awesome and such a powerful woman, and she's got such a talent and a skill, and she could, I think she's quite genuinely a really sort of caring, compassionate woman.
And she'd bring the music as well, right? The entertainment.
She would bring the music, that's for sure. Oh crikey, who else? Who else do I? I think you've probably got like real powerhouses. Like your Michelle Obama and your Oprah Winfrey, people like that. I mean, can you imagine what stories they would have to tell?
Oh my goodness. I know.
They would have us all captured. And I've noticed a bit of a thread here. They're all women so far I need to find a male maybe to kind of start to readdress the balance. But I don't know.
Gender equality and all that, Sarah. There.
Here you go. Maybe it's a Midlands thing, but again, having kind of seen him, a bit controversial, but Joe likes it. I like, he's a bit of a rule breaker, another Midlands guy, but a very smart, intelligent person too. And I think he would bring the control.
Who's that? Who was that?
Joe likes it.
Oh, Joe likes it. Oh my goodness! Like he would be an incredible guest. Like he just gives no hoots about anything. Like he's just so like, and what, and so what, and I do, even like I have a rebellious kind of streak at times, but he's another level of a rebel.
He is, but I think he's smart and it's well thought out too, and a clever guy.
He's very clever, very smart. Yeah, gosh, yeah. He's a good dinner party guest because he would have a lot of stories to share and some of his experiences. And I can imagine the level of abuse he often gets as well with some of the stuff that he does. But he just doesn't.
But he carries on.
He does. And my favorite moment of his is that Hugo Boss thing where he changed his name. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's a bit of So no, and representing the Midlands as well. Another Brummie.
Love it. Oh wow, that would be a great dinner. I always say that I'd have the powerful 3 at my dinner, which is Brené Brown, Michelle Obama, and Oprah Winfrey. But I know that if they were at my dinner, I probably would be just really quiet and quite mute because I'll be in awe of their total inspiration. In fact, actually, if anyone is listening, Brené Brown is going to be in Amsterdam at an event, and Chaya Mystery is collating a load of names so we can get like a group discount. So if anyone's interested in seeing Brené in person in Amsterdam in September next year, get in touch with Chaya Mystery. Sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in there because, I'm a northerner, so any discount is good. That's what I'm saying. So if anybody wants to kind of come along with a group of us, then Chaya's collecting names. So just throw that in there. But brilliant. I love that, Sarah. What a wonderful dinner party that would be. Can you believe we hit 30 minutes already? We've done our show. Time flies on this show. Thank you for those of you who are listening and took on tips and practical tips from Sarah. Sarah, if they want to engage with you, want to find you, where's the best place for them to kind of connect with you?
Oh, well, I'm working on all of that at the moment. I've been so busy concentrating on events. But at the moment, I'm sort of Sarah's Event Life on Instagram. Come and find me on there and say hello. And you can watch me and I'm working with the team on me and my brand and what we look like. So you can see that evolve, which might be quite fun.
Amazing. Love that. And obviously Sarah's one of our associates for Inner Rebel as well. So if there's any event support that you need and you want them to be inclusive, then Sarah is part of the team. So we can help with that as well. Next week, we are here with the wonderful Raki, who is going to be helping and supporting with practical tips around HR and inclusive EDI policies as well. Well, inclusive policies with an inclusive lens, I should say. So we're going to be talking about HR. We're going to be talking about that very uncomfortable subject about HR and comms, because it can be a bit tenacious between the two groups. Not for me. Some of my really good friends are HR professionals, but I know there's lots of comms folks who want to improve that relationship and vice versa from HR as well. So Raki's going to join us. She's part of the associate. So same time next week, 11:30, live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, and also live on X. Please do let us know who would you like to listen to for future guests. We're putting the list together for next year as well. And thank you, Sarah, for joining me today and for your fab contribution as well. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you. We'll see you all next week.